Final Ventures coming at you for episode number 42. 42, Jay.
You know what that means? That means that there's probably about 90 hours of us yapping out there, floating around through the ether.
42 episodes.
That people are listening to for some reason. I know, it's crazy. After episode 40, and when we were posting that, and you did the description in your altered state.
Oh, yeah.
I was sitting there doing that. My wife was right next to me, and I said, 40 episodes is a lot. It really is.
It really is, yeah.
It's crazy. We've stuck with it. We started in January of 20, and we've done about 17 episodes a year.
That's good.
And I think we're going to do more than that this year, because I think since this is an Essentials show.
Yes.
Essentials Volume 8.
8.
And so we've got 3 more of these shows. Then that's gone. It's done. In the books, written in stone. What do you think about that?
Essential 9.
It's 8.
It's 8.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Essential 8.
Can you believe it?
That's a lot.
It is.
And I got to say, it's one of those things that when we first started, it seemed, oh yeah, that'll be easy.
It's not easy.
It's not easy.
It's not easy it would not be easy if we took good notes and did good research. But since we don't, it's even less easy it's even more difficult.
It's just one of those things that gets almost picking another 10 gets like, oh, did I get this? Did I get this?
Yeah. It gives me
anxiety. Yeah.
Like the night before we do a show, I'm like, if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do a good job of it. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it makes you rediscover a lot of things in your collection that you didn't know. And the way that I've been doing it is basically either flipping through the records, and I've got a lot of them, and you do too, or like last night, it was so dark in my house, even with all the lights on in the room, I had a flashlight, and I was shining the flashlight at the spines of the records. My neighbors probably thought there was a burglar, but yeah, man.
You were burgling.
I was burgling my record collection. That sounds dirty somehow. Yeah. So, episode 42, Essentials 8. Is there anything different about the records that you're choosing this time around?
No.
In this last half of the 100?
No, since we're not, and that's another thing we're doing, we're not putting our 100 essentials in any kind of order.
No.
We're just, hey, here's 100 essential.
It's a big tub.
Yeah, it's a big tub of records. So I'm just trying to include everything.
And it's difficult.
Yeah, because I want it to be
well-rounded.
I want it to be well-rounded.
Inclusive. You want it to be biographical from a sense that records that mean a lot to you now, records that meant a lot to you then, and everything in between.
Yeah, and the way I'm doing it, they may not be my top 100 favorite albums, but they're records that I think anybody needs in their collection. Or
records that are just that important.
Yeah.
It's like
we each have a different perspective on it. That's what I love about it.
Yeah. So I'm just bringing the White Album in 100 times. It's that good, folks. So what's your first selection?
I'll kick it off.
Please do.
It's a big one.
We've unsheathed many of these records. Our director suggested that, and I think it's a fine idea.
The Police, Synchronicity. This was their 5th album, their last release as a band.
Yes. Well, their last studio release.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, but yeah.
And it's a big one, and it looms large in record lore because
of the colored vinyl.
No, not just that, because there are 37 variants of the cover.
Yes, there are 37 variants of the cover, and I do have a purple colored vinyl.
I have a purple one as well.
I did not know. I didn't even know they were colored until Kevin Stout told us about them, and it's like, oh my God! I went home and checked it out.
There's a whole lot of people who talk about this album for no other reason than the color of the actual wax and the variations on the cover.
Yeah, Kevin was procuring every single cover for a client.
And I think the one that when we found out about it, he was looking for the gold one. There's one that is not red, yellow, and blue, but gold on all three stripes. It's crazy to me that we never heard of that.
I know. I'd never heard that there were that many, and I didn't even know it was purple.
Yeah, I know.
It's one of those things.
I don't think most people would unless they held it like up to a very bright light.
You got to hold it up to the light to actually see it.
Because I believe the purple ones are the earlier pressings, and then they went to black.
Yeah.
Yeah. When
they started pressing a bunch of them. So.
And we haven't even talked about the music on this. This is a great album.
This is a great album.
I mean, it's a lot of times when we talk about bands in their early releases, we talk about a greatest hits being like the band's first or second album, which you think of the Cars, first album, that's a greatest hits. This is the fifth album for these guys, and it's a greatest hits.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Can you imagine your last studio album? You go out and that's it. We're done as a band.
On top of the world, man.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I was lucky. When this came out in '83, I got to see them on that tour.
How was it?
It was incredible.
Yeah.
The light show, because they had this foil that would pop out, and like when they did every little thing she does is magic, it popped on, and it's like, oh my God.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Did they do, I know that they did Police Alive Around the World, I think is the name of the album, but I can't remember if that was a Synchronicity tour or if it was before that.
I don't know. I don't know about their live.
Have to look into that
releases.
Yeah,
but
that's a great choice.
Yeah, there were. Oh God. I mean,
and the funny thing is, when I was burgling my collection last night, I literally was looking at my list, and I was like, I have no Police on my list. Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
Yeah, there aren't too many times that we can worry about us bringing the same record.
Yeah,
except in a few, isolated events.
I didn't have any, and I'm like, they were a band I really wanted to include, but as you're picking through stuff, it's like, I'll get back to that.
Yeah.
And that's maybe the theme for the show. This is a bunch of stuff that I wanted to include earlier, and I just didn't get around to it.
Yeah. The anxiety for me lies in just choosing the records, but also when I start looking at the last 7 shows in my list, I'm like, oh, well, I need this or I need that. It's really weird what making a list does to your mind.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that people like the shows.
And we take it serious.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, pull my finger. Just kidding. That's a great choice, man. You say something like we take it serious, you know that I'm gonna.
Yeah, you're gonna throw something out there.
Any other notable notes?
God, I don't. The Guardian called the Police the biggest band in the world in 1983, which was probably true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rolling Stone described each cut on Synchronicity not simply a song, but a miniature, discrete soundtrack. That's a good way to sum up this album.
There's, what is it? Tea in the Sahara. Is that one of the songs on? Yeah, that's a Stuart Copeland song. That's kind of weird. And Walking on the Moon, is that on here too?
Well, it basically had 5 big singles: Every Breath You Take, Synchronicity, Wrapped Around Your Finger, King of Pain, and Synchronicity 2.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was Synchronicity 1 and then Synchronicity 2.
I prefer Synchronicity 2.
You do?
Yeah, it's the more faster paced, like harder rocking tune. But yeah, that's a great choice, man. I maybe don't feel as compelled to bring a Police album.
Yeah, because we've covered it.
Yeah. So my first choice is a collection, but it's a collection worth having. It's called Essential Chicago Blues.
Ooh.
It came out in 2010. This press is a 2019 press, and if you look at the people on this, I mean, I know that we're not supposed to look at it.
It's everybody who's anybody.
Yeah, Willie Dixon, Sonny Boy Williamson, Muddy Waters, Otis Rush, Buddy Guy and his band, Junior Wells, Otis Spann. I mean, it is a fantastic collection of Chicago blues artists. And I can't remember how I found out about it. I think I had heard somebody talking about it, and Mr. Russell is a huge blues guy. And so I'm always like looking for stuff for other people. And I bought this thinking, well, maybe I'll just give it to Jason. No, I kept it because it's that great. With artists like this in the time period that you're talking about, a lot of these guys don't have catalogs that are being repopped
Very
a lot.
true.
So
Yeah.
a lot of them are hard to find. If you're looking for an original Sonny Boy Williamson record, you're probably going to be looking for a while. So that's why I'm including this, because all of the work is done for you. All you have to do is throw it on the table and listen to it, and it sounds great. I mean, obviously some of the recording quality of some of these artists at those times isn't great.
Yeah.
But it's there.
What is the label? Who put it out?
I think this is called Not Now Music, and it's distributed by Not Now Music. So
more of an independent label.
Yeah. And I don't know anything about the label, but I would assume that they are a blues-based label.
Yeah, I wish it was easier to find blues records. I know
they seem to be like blues records and like hard rock and heavy metal records from the late 70s and early 80s. They're almost impossible to find. I mean,
and I mean, you know, it's funny with jazz kind of having a resurgent.
Yeah.
There's, you know, a bunch of jazz, with Blue Note and Tone Poets, all these great jazz releases.
Yeah,
but
Impulse is doing great jazz re-releases. And
yeah, somebody needs to be a blues-based label and just release blues stuff.
The funny thing is, though, if you think about, we've talked about it in other shows, if it weren't for artists like the Rolling Stones,
oh yeah,
we probably wouldn't be talking about blues music right now. I mean,
very true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I still, you can look up interviews with Dan Aykroyd and different people who are higher profile people in the blues music industry. They all think it's ridiculous that people are ignoring blues as much as they are.
Yeah, it's definitely a genre that's ready for a resurgence.
It definitely is. And then when you think like in the early to mid 90s, you had like Johnny Lang and a bunch of these young guitarist guys becoming popular. Who's the other? Bonamassa. All of these people coming, you know, onto the scene and kind of bringing people's attention back to blues. And speaking of Bonamassa, he's probably done more for that genre than anybody else. And so that's also why I wanted to include it, because you know it's kind of a forgotten genre for a lot of people. I mean, there are people who look specifically for it.
It's hard to find. I have a couple of blues records, but I mean, it's like you said, they're really hard to find.
Yeah. So you cannot. I think this is like an all-in-one collection of the original collection on CD was 2 volumes. So obviously you've got a limited amount.
Yeah, they pared it down.
Mm-hmm. But if you see it, grab it. You're not gonna regret it. It sounds great, and a lot of times those blues records remind me of the jazz records that I talk about. When you throw it on, it's like you're in the room with them.
And that's one of the reasons I like blues over jazz, is because they're singing.
Yeah, not only that, it is more approachable.
Yeah,
for sure. But they're interconnected too. So, yeah, man, Essential Chicago Blues.
And the Blues Hall of Fame is in St. Louis.
Yep.
I was there this summer. which is very cool. I had no idea it was there. Just stumbled on it.
I had no idea either. And my wife and I were there in the middle of COVID. Obviously, the museum wasn't open, but I would like to make it back down there and check it out. It's cool. All right. Good first one.
That is a good first one.
What's your number 2?
Number 2. Since it's the second album on the list, I'm going to go with a double LP.
I like that idea.
Husker Du.
Oh, man.
Zen Arcade.
Husker Du, the very, very influential Minneapolis band.
Oh, yeah. And this was not their first release. This was their second release. And when this came out in, I want to say, 83, I'm going to...
You should move that
struggle
closer to you.
Get to my notes.
You should move it closer to you.
84.
1984.
1984.
I'm sorry, I gotta...
Jason's verklempt.
I am. I'm verklempt. I need a Svitz. Okay.
All right. So, and it's back to our labels. I just keep picking these up. I don't know why.
He wants to touch it.
I want to touch it. So, Husker Du was on SST, a classic LA-based label that put out some amazing tunes.
I'm glad you said that because I get them all confused.
You know, it was weird because they're LA-based, so a lot of bands were from LA and the LA area, like Black Flag. But these guys were from Minneapolis and they're on SST.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, they were like the trailblazers for all of those Minneapolis bands.
Oh yeah.
And a few of them that come to mind: Jayhawks, Husker Du, Soul Asylum, it's Soul Asylum, and
the Bodines. There were all kinds of bands in that one little area that really took off. It was really not just Milwaukee. I think the Bodines were more from Wisconsin.
Oh yeah, Minneapolis, Wisconsin, and then you also had Prince.
Yeah, and I wonder. I've never heard these guys say it was because of Prince, but you got to think it was.
Well, the attention that came to that area had to be because of him, because he really was one of the first.
Yeah, and it just made that whole area explode.
That's awesome, and this is just a regular album, right? Regular studio album for them.
Yeah.
A double album.
It was a double LP, their second release, and this thing exploded on the alternative scene.
I always say this when you whip these records out. I need to listen to these guys because I have a long, long time ago, but I've never circled back. You're bringing a lot of records that have very similar artwork types because we're back to the pastel, like watercolor over photo thing.
And I bring a lot of stuff from the 80s, so that was probably a big 80s thing.
Yeah.
A lot of art designers were copying that look.
Yeah.
But it's a great look because the three guys, and they were a three-piece, and the three guys are wandering through a junkyard.
That's so cool. And this is an original. I got it when it came out. That's probably worth some shekels.
It may. It's surprising because all this stuff's been re-released. And Husker Du is one of those bands, they've never really gone out of the alternative scene and then made a resurgence.
Yeah.
They're just somebody that alternative bands are always saying, oh, Husker Du.
Yeah. And it's almost like they cleared the path for all these other bands to like surpass them and become a lot more well-known and successful, but in music lore from that time and in that area, these are the guys. Yeah,
I think more people know who this band is than know their songs.
Right.
And I bet kind of like you, I don't think you would know. You might know a Husker Du song if you heard it, but it's not something that's pops in.
Yeah. And I think if they didn't have such a distinctive name, that might not even be the thing.
Very
true.
What I mean? Yeah.
So, no, that's awesome. That's great. Double album. How many songs are on it?
There are a lot because the songs are not.
They're pretty short.
Yeah, they're short or long.
Very cool, dude. I love it.
But they have a heavy guitar sound. They're not. Of alternative bands, I wouldn't say they're terribly accessible.
Right.
Just because it's a sound that, hey,
it's not poppy.
No, it's not. They weren't played on the radio
Right.
ever.
Right.
Not even alternative stations.
Yeah.
It's just something that didn't get played. Maybe college stations.
They are definitely in and of themselves.
Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome.
So that's Husker Du.
How about a double album from me? It's Genesis, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Of the Peter Gabriel Genesis records, this is absolutely my favorite. And it came out on November 18, 1974, originally Charisma Records, and this is their last album with Peter. And it's a concept album like a lot of the Peter Genesis records were. The thing about concept albums, and we've talked about them before, is even within the most dug in, weird concept album like themes, there always seem to be good songs that pop out of those. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not a concept album dude, don't listen to Roger Waters era Pink Floyd.
Right.
Because almost every album is
a concept.
But even within the confines of a concept album, there are great songs, and that happens with Genesis too. And The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway is a big one. Broadway Melody of 1974, Cuckoo, Cocoon, and Counting Out Time is my favorite tune on this. And go listen to it, because it really sounds like Peter Gabriel solo.
Yeah.
And it's a very poppy, very approachable song. And that's what I love about it. I mean, I think that I don't know all of the ins and outs of what was going on personality-wise in the band, but you got to figure being in a band with Peter Gabriel at this time was probably a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, he was wearing the crazy
makeup. He's a different guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always kind of liken him to Bowie.
Yeah, he at that time for sure.
Yeah.
When his solo stuff into the 80s and 90s took off, it was a lot calmer
and more approachable.
Yeah.
But I look at the costumes, the makeup, the different personalities and stuff as very David Bowie-esque.
Yeah.
And this is just a great record. I had a drum instructor when I was in high school, Dave Herrick, and he's the one that turned me on to Genesis. And the gatefold in this is just gorgeous. See, look, there's all the pictures of the dudes, and
I love gatefolds.
Yeah, it's very cool. Anyway, Dave turned me on to this record, and thank God for him. He was one of my musical senseis when I was 16, 17 years old.
And it's not often a band changes singers and then becomes bigger.
In reading about when they changed singers, it was like literally for some people that were huge fans of the band, it was like 2 albums later that they realized that Peter wasn't singing anymore because Phil's voice sounds so much like him. Go back and listen to the Peter stuff and the early Phil stuff. There's not a huge difference in their voices. It's crazy. Yeah. And they did. They became an enormous popular band. And if you had told them in 1974, hey, in the mid 80s, you guys are going to be on top of the world, they probably would have thought you were nuts. But great band, especially if you're into prog.
They're very prog.
Yeah. This, like I said, there's some more approachable stuff on here, but there's also some dug in progressive stuff on their records back from this to the beginning of their existence. So, and I love the packaging in this, and I don't know what it is, but there's something that I love about a double album. It's got 2 records. It's got a gatefold.
Gatefold, yeah.
So many of these new repops that people are doing, they're shoving 2 records, 280-gram records in one sleeve. And I think just like weirdly shaped hype stickers, that's bullshit.
Yes, and I have one of those.
What's your next selection?
Well, we're gonna bring out the behemoth.
Uh-oh. Do you need me to spot you?
No, I need a drum roll.
Oh, okay. I can do that for you. Oh, look at that.
Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon.
It's almost like we've talked about this before.
Yeah. There's a whole show.
Yeah. So, Pink Floyd's 8th album, right?
Correct.
And really, from a popularity standpoint, their breakthrough album.
Yeah. Really.
And we've talked about it before. I can't remember the number. How many has this thing sold? Is it like 20? It's like 26 or 27 million copies.
A boatload.
Yeah. And it's the artwork and the lack of any kind of identifying words on the front.
And it's a gatefold and a single album.
Yeah. Yep.
And
see, that makes me happy. Even every record should be a gatefold.
I love how the inside.
Yeah, it's got like the pulse, the rainbow pulse.
They take the pulse.
Yeah. It originally came with a poster.
Yes.
A couple posters. It came with a few posters. It came with a poster from the pyramids, right? Like the pyramids of Giza. And then it also came with like postcards, I think.
It had all kinds of, I don't think this one, I bought this one used many, many years ago, and I don't think it has anything with it. No.
It's so cool though. And it's a great record. I mean, the big song, Money. What else? I'm drawing a blank.
Really, there's Us and Them. Yeah. Those were the two big songs.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's so cool. I'm kind of surprised that this hasn't made an appearance in our.
It was back to hey, I got to get this one in, and I've just been waiting.
Yeah.
And this was the right time.
Yeah, that's great. Bill would be proud.
Yes.
Awesome. So I was just talking about bullshit double albums that they stuff into a single sleeve. This record, I'm going to pull my info up, but this record, when I was a senior in high school, I believe is when it came out. September 24, 1991, Warner Brothers Records. This is the first Chili Peppers record to be produced by Rick Rubin. And I think he's produced all but one of their albums since. And these last two records, they just put 2 double albums out within a span of 6 months. Return to the Dream Canteen, and the one before that was Unlimited Love.
They put out a lot of music.
Yeah. I was reading about the Return to the Dream Canteen, or whatever the new one is, and they were talking about when the Chili Peppers do something, they do it big. And they have not put out an album with less than 60 minutes of music in like 20 years.
Wow.
Which is a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Anyway, I was a senior in high school. I was working in a movie theater, and I was an usher. And when you got the invitation to be the popcorn popper, you could spend all day upstairs listening to music and popping popcorns and filling up 40-gallon bags of popcorn. A buddy of mine had this record, and I just fell in love with it. Power of Equality, If You Have to Ask, Breaking the Girl, Funky Monks, Suck My Kiss is the big one off of this, and Give It Away. But Under the Bridge is another big tune from this, but I skip that every time it pops up. The Greeting Song, Sir Psycho Sexy, and They're Red Hot, which I think is a remake of and I don't know if it's a Robert Johnson song, but this is just fantastic. It sounds great. The artwork is fantastic, but damn it, it should be a gatefold. Don't you think? And the back of it looks pretty cool too. But they're a band for me that I will not be a completist about, because some of their stuff just really grabs me, and some of it I can do without. The other album of theirs that I really, really like is Californication, but I do not have that on vinyl. You a Chili Peppers dude?
Oh, well, the Chili Peppers, I saw them on that tour in November, and if I can remember the band, I know Jane's Addiction was one of the openers, and
then it was another band that you were
I think it was the Smashing Pumpkins.
Wasn't?
I think it was Smashing Pumpkins, Jane's Addiction, or could have been Pearl Jam.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was.
But I mean, there were 3 really great bands.
Yeah.
That went on to bigger things.
Yeah, all 3 of them.
Yeah.
What's your, I saw you fiddling around over there.
Yeah, I'm digging. So I think next up.
Nice.
Stone Temple Pilots Core.
Yes.
Who were out around that same time.
Yeah. Yep.
And really, the Stone Temple Pilots, their first 4 albums are
untouchable.
They're very, very good.
Yeah. This is another band. It's a theme, and I've talked about it many, many times. This album, they started playing it, even though they weren't from Seattle, they were like the band that I think really first started getting that airplay.
Yeah.
And it got so overplayed, but the songs on this record are so good.
Well, and they're one of those bands that a lot of the true grunge people would say, oh, they're sellouts.
Yeah.
They're too poppy.
Yeah.
But the songs are just amazing.
And I mean, you got the DeLeo brothers and Weiland, and they're just a great band. I mean, they're heavy. They can be really, really heavy, but they can also be, they've got Plush on here, which is amazing, light song.
Yeah.
Creep. It's amazing. The only other band that I can compare them to between that light and dark is Zeppelin. I mean, they go from heavy to acoustic and really light.
Yeah.
And they just do it so well.
Yeah, and this thing came out in 92, and it peaked at number 3 on Billboard.
Unbelievable. I didn't realize it.
Yeah, that's
got that high. I think they sold like 8 or 9 million copies of it. I think it's creeping up on, so to speak, on 10 million copies.
They're a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. Where'd you get it?
This was a repop for sure. Because I by that time I was buying everything on CD, so it was one of those recent repops. It might even be colored vinyl. I don't know.
I went to Walmart recently and they had that, and I saw it like 6 months ago, and I hadn't seen it since. And I saw it like 2 weeks ago, and I didn't buy it. And I should have.
Yeah, because a lot of the Walmart stuff is colored vinyl.
Yeah. And those, I think they're pressed in the same plants that, press all the other records. So there's nothing wrong with those pressings. I know I see a lot of chatter, in online record groups about how's the press sound? Well, I mean,
they sound great.
Yeah. And they're not terribly expensive.
No. And for a long time, this was the hardest one to get.
Yeah.
Core was the one that nobody had. And then when it was finally released, it's like, boom.
They just did a 30th anniversary of this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like box thing with unreleased stuff.
That would be interesting to hear.
Yeah. I tend to really, really like Purple. I mean, when that came out, I was working in a record store, and I just couldn't stop listening to it.
Yeah, I think I saw, I can't remember which show it was, but I think it was the tour for Core. They had this set. It was at the State Fairgrounds, and it was a living room set.
At the fairgrounds,
at the fairgrounds and the Coliseum. And they had this living room set that dropped from the ceiling. It was very cool.
That sounds cool.
I mean, that was one thing. A lot of 80s and 90s bands had these incredible light shows and sets. They really made a concert experience an experience.
Yeah.
They weren't just playing.
That's awesome.
But it was cool. The set dropped, and they were just all sitting around in a living room playing. I
only saw these guys once.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I saw them in, I don't remember what year, maybe 98, 99, there was a Hard Rock Cafe, like Rock Fest festival show that was traveling around. So had these guys, and I'm not remembering all the people on it, but I remember these guys, Bare Naked Ladies, and the big one was Metallica.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it was at the Chicago Speedway that I saw this show. And that's the only time I saw STP.
They played one of the X Fest we were doing green room for. So it was weird having Weiland backstage.
What was that like?
He's a wired guy, or was a wired guy.
Yeah, yeah. Part of his problem.
Yeah. I mean, he was just high strung.
Yeah.
He's like the kid on Adderall.
That's a great choice. What's your favorite, do you have a favorite track on there?
Boy. Probably Plush. Plush is probably
It's like choosing a favorite kid, isn't it?
Yeah. And the way, and I always say this, but it's a full album front to back.
Yeah.
I mean, when you hear one song, you want to hear the rest.
Yeah. We were just having that discussion with Keith earlier. I mean, the Beatles were kind of the originators. I think people who were huge Beatles fans at the time that their records were coming out were taking a different attitude toward albums. It was still single based, but I'm also one of those people who loves listening to the tracking of the album, the way that the band intended for it to be released. So, yeah. Cool, man. I almost lost this in my record box.
Ooh.
So this is Muddy Waters, Hard Again. And this was produced by Johnny Winter. Came out in 1977. It was the first of his albums produced by Johnny, and the first album on Blue Sky Records after leaving Chess Records. He had been on Chess Records for a really long time. And Johnny Winter is another dude who we were just talking about blues with that Essential Chicago Blues. He was an early, what do you call it? Like progenitor of the blues.
Yeah.
And he's got so many good blues records. They're hard to find. You don't see him everywhere, but man, he was amazing. But he was a huge Muddy fan, and he produced this. So 3 of the songs on the album, Mannish Boy, I Want to Be Loved, and I Can't Be Satisfied, were re-recordings of songs that were previously recorded for Chess Records. So, they kind of took some of his earlier work and reintroduced it at this point. But this is an MOV release, and I think it just came out like last year, 45th anniversary of this. So we were talking earlier. It's hard to find records from these guys, and as soon as I saw this, I don't even know where I saw it.
That's one where you pull the the trigger immediately.
Click, ka-ching, I'll take it. And it sounds so good. I mean, I know that your MOV of Dirt had an issue with it.
Well, I bought it used, and who knows why it had that issue.
And occasionally I'll hear about issues with MOV pressings, but so far I haven't had any problems. And I just bought a slew of later day Elvis Costello records, and they're all MOVs, and they're fantastic.
Sometimes I'll buy stuff online and it'll show up as an MOV, and I'm like, oh, they don't really, it's weird that they don't advertise that.
Well,
much.
I kind of wonder if it's a fulfillment thing.
It could be.
Yeah, where they have the regular press of it, and that's what you're clicking on and saying you want, and then somehow it just gets fulfilled with the MOV version, which, they're supposedly better pressings. I mean, hopefully there's no MoFi issue with MOV pressings anytime soon. But this is an awesome record. This is it's actually pressed on blue vinyl. I'm not going to mess with the bag. It's intentionally in the bag.
No debagging.
Yeah.
Or rebagging.
Oh, and here's a picture of Muddy and Johnny, and I don't know who the other guy is, but they're just sitting there and having a good old time.
Do you know when Muddy did his first release?
I don't. I would think it was probably in the 50s.
Yeah.
Like mid 50s. But again, that was at a time when black artists, sometimes, in the 50s, a lot of black artists did become known, but it was because white artists were recording their music.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is just a classic blues record. So
that is a good one.
And it's number 2479 out of 2500.
Nice.
What does that mean, you might ask? I don't have a fucking clue. It means that was 2479, and then they stopped pressing at 2500 and made 10,000 more.
Okay, next on the list, Modest Mouse.
Oh, nice.
Good news for people who love bad news.
Yeah.
And when this record came out, there were so many other records popping at the same time. It was released in 2004.
Love this record. I love this band.
Yeah. And this, it was during that we talked about on our, I can't remember which show it was, show 40.
Yeah.
We talked about
the new shit.
The new shit, yes. We talked about how that time period, there were so many great bands coming of age.
Yeah. And they are such an off the beaten path band. The reason that what was the big song from this? I ran my car into
Float Out.
Float On.
Float On.
Float On. I remember hearing that and literally thinking that maybe this was a new Talking Heads song. I mean, that's how much they remind me of the Talking Heads.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
They are very, and that's probably one of the reasons I really dig them.
Yeah. I mean, I heard it and I could have sworn up and down. I think I heard it on one of the radio stations around here. I mean, that would have been almost 20 years ago. But I was like, damn it, are the Talking Heads back together? And then I found out it was these guys. And they have like 3 or 4 albums before this.
Oh, yeah. This was their...
Watch, you're going to make me a liar now.
I'm going to make you a liar. Let me see.
What a weird band to become that popular at that time, right? Because they're not necessarily a poppy sounding band. They're certainly not an approachable band. But here we are talking about them.
Well,
18 years later.
I mean, at the time, alternative music was raging.
Yeah.
Alternative music was really making a big comeback.
Yeah. This is one I definitely want to get. What else on here? Is there anything else on here that's notable? Let's see.
It did
Black Cadillacs, The World at Large, Bury Me With It, Dig Your Grave, Bukowski, The Devil's Workday.
And Bukowski's, a song about Charles.
Yeah. That's
Drinks for All My Friends.
That's so cool. Yeah, I had a Modest Mouse on an Essentials.
Yes, you did.
A couple shows ago.
Yeah, and it sold 1.5 million copies in the U.S. by 2006.
That's substantial. For
and
sure.
there were 3 singles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ocean Breeze Salty, The World at Large, and of course, Float On.
Yeah. That's so cool, man.
But Float On was the song that I think everybody associates with Modest Mouse.
It's still a big tune.
Yeah, it still gets quite a bit of airplay.
I've heard it mixed in with some hip hop tunes too. So, we aren't the only ones latching on to that one.
True. And this is one of those, this is the double LP that's not a gatefold.
In a single sleeve. You
Come
bastards.
on, guys.
Is that Epic Records by chance?
Yes.
Yeah. Epic. Step it up, man. All right. My next one is a classic, and it's the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. And this is a heavy one. So I think our stand is holding. We've almost talked ad infinitum about this record. This is one of the MoFi versions of this, and it could be cut at 45. It could be cut at 45 RPM. This, to me, is the Bob Dylan record.
Yeah.
You know, this came out May 27, 1963 on Columbia. Of course, he's been on Columbia his whole career and always will. Probably smart by them. Opens with Blowin' in the Wind, which became an anthem of the 1960s. And then Peter, Paul, and Mary, of course, did a version of it. And Girl from the North Country, Masters of War, A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, and Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, which for my money is probably my favorite Bob Dylan song. The cool thing about this MoFi version is, so there are 2 records. It is a gatefold, and there's just some cool like outtake pictures in here of the cover shoot, and then there's pictures of him in the studio recording this thing, and it's just a beautiful package. And have you ever looked up to see who this woman is?
No, I have not. But this cover is iconic.
Yeah,
shot in Manhattan.
Yep.
And this was the one that Cameron Crowe for Vanilla Sky kind of redid with Tom Cruise.
Yeah. That's an underrated movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very strange.
But I mean, you know, to try to duplicate that same look was very cool.
Yeah. It's almost kind of like not as popular, but also on the Lower East Side in New York, you have the Physical Graffiti album or Physical Graffiti building. And the other one like that, I just lost. What's the other album where? Oh, Abbey Road.
Abbey Road, yeah.
Yeah, I mean there's probably more than that, but those are the 3 that really stand out.
Yeah, where it's like, hey, let's go to that spot and get a picture.
Yeah, but this is, I will be listening to this when I get home because all of the bullshit going on with all the MoFi stuff aside, their records still sound good. Now, is there an issue with them, an issue with the wording or the way that they have advertised for the last 15 years? Maybe. But they still sound good. And then the cool thing about this, which is the same as it is on the original, is it's kind of our favorite like bio stuff, like a jazz record.
It very much is like a jazz record.
Yeah. So, I don't have a lot of Dylan because that's kind of like...
Yeah, it is 45.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of Dylan, so I'm cherry picking my Bob Dylans. And this was one I want. The first one I have, Blonde on Blonde, and then Blood on the Tracks. For me, those are absolute. I mean, I don't think those other 3 are going to make it onto my essentials just because I'm not a huge Dylan guy. I mean, I love him as a songwriter. You've seen him too, right?
I've seen him several times.
Oh man.
And the first time he was still in the Blood on the Tracks Christian phase.
Yeah.
It was not for that album. It was probably the one that came out after that.
Oh God.
Dylan has so many albums.
Yeah. What's the name of it?
Something Savior.
Yeah. He played at IU probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and Elvis Costello opened that whole tour, and I didn't go, and that's like one of my really big regrets.
It's funny because the last time he played this year early at IU, you saw Elvis Costello that same night.
I know. I already had the tickets. And you know what pisses me off about that is there were a group of assholes behind me at that show that literally yapped through the whole show. Can we talk about this for just a second? There's a new pandemic out there, folks, and it's people who don't know how to act in public. I almost got into a fight with a guy at the Nick Mason show because he wouldn't shut the fuck up. I'm not kidding you. He and his girlfriend were right over my left shoulder and yapping for the first 3 songs. And I wasn't a dick about it, but I turned around and I'm like, hey man, there's a show going on here. And he looked at me like, huh? I said, we're trying to listen to the show.
Yeah.
And then 2 songs later they left.
Good.
But yeah. Anyway, back to Bob Dylan. It seems like everybody has a different sweet spot in the Dylan catalog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there probably are a lot of people that like that born again Christian stuff that he was doing. I think he did that for like 2 or 3 albums.
Yeah.
And then you get into his 80s stuff, and then you get into the like early 90s, like Time Out of Mind. And
he was still putting out great records.
Yeah.
The guy, if you're trying to collect every Dylan record, that's all you're going to have.
Well, yeah, it's going to get expensive. But I love this one, and I love the cover, and I love that I got it a MoFi pressing at 45 RPM.
Yeah, that's one that when I get around to framing a couple albums, that one's going in the frame.
Yeah.
Because it's such an iconic photo and album cover, and it's everything about music.
One of the things that has happened since we've been doing this show is learning about that history and that lore and those things, and having a completely new appreciation for album covers and what people are attracted to.
Yeah.
It's very cool. What's your next one?
All right, next up.
Gosh.
Yeah, here we go. ZZ Top.
DeGuayo. What a great record.
And this one's still, I don't like Shrink. This one's still in Shrink.
Yeah.
I just left it in Shrink.
Why not?
Why not? It's in really, really good shape. This is a record I got at Karma.
Oh, yeah. Like a few times ago when we were there, right? Yeah.
Doug had a really clean collection in, and this was one of them. And it's like, I already had it, but I didn't have the cover. I had a really clean copy with just the inner sleeve.
I remember that.
Yeah. And it's one of those things. That's one of the great things about digging records. You may buy something just to have it, but then you're always looking for the upgrade.
The better version of it.
Yeah, the better version.
That's why I always, if there's new stuff and I got a couple extra shekels, I'll just buy 2.
Yeah, it's...
Great idea.
That's a good idea, Jay. But this, God, I mean, this is for sure a greatest hits.
What do we got on here?
You read them.
I'm going to read them. I Thank You, which is a Sam and Dave cover. She Loves My Automobile. I'm Bad, I'm Nationwide. That's one of the big ones.
Yes.
Maniac Mechanic, Dust My Broom, Low Down in the Street, Hi-Fi Mama, Cheap Sunglasses.
Cheap Sunglasses is...
And Esther Be the One. What a great band.
They're such a good band.
And like totally under the radar for most people.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking about a dude that was Jimi Hendrix's favorite guitar player, you should probably pay attention.
This is kind of our blues show.
It is kind of a blues show.
Because this is Texas blues to a T.
Yeah, yeah. And the originators of it, really.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're still together, even though we just lost Dusty, they plugged his bass tech in, and he started growing the beard, and now he's the new guy in ZZ Top, which they were one of the only bands with all original members until Dusty died. And
I don't think they've ever really taken a big break from touring.
No, I think they just put out a doc like 3 years ago. I think it's called That Little Band from Texas.
Yeah, it's good.
And I've heard it's really good, but they do talk about a time like in the early 80s, I think before Eliminator came out, where there was like a 2 or 3 year period where they just took off, because I'm sure they all had stuff going on, family,
Well, in the 70s, this record came out in 79, and it was their 6th studio album. So in the 70s, they were touring like mad.
And putting albums out like every 8 months, which is crazy. For bands to be that prodigious and to still maintain that touring, no wonder they needed a break in the early 80s. That's a great record, man.
Yeah, this is a prize.
Yeah. All right. I've got a jazz record.
Well, you had to have a jazz record.
Yeah, everybody just comes to expect that. So this is Kenny Burrell. It's just called Kenny Burrell. He's a really, really famous jazz guitarist. This came out in 1956, released on Blue Note. Believe it or not, do you know who the artist is? If you take a look at that, if you had to take a guess.
No.
It's Andy Warhol.
I can see that.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
You usually see his pop art type stuff, really striking colors and Campbell's soup cans and, Marilyn Monroe's face in 8 different colors. But no, this is a drawing. This was actually, I think that they commissioned this for Andy to draw it. You cannot go wrong if you like listening to instrumental guitar. This is a great record to get. I feel like I'm doing a commercial for the Blue Note Tone Poet packages, but this just came out, I don't know, 2 months ago, and it's another one. I sound like a broken record, but it's another one that when you play it, it sounds like you're literally sitting like 10 feet away from them in the studio. So Get Happy, the first song, But Not For Me, which is a Gershwin tune, Mexico City, Molten Swing, Cheetah, Now See How You Are, and Finupi, and then How About You. The guys playing with him on this are Kenny Dorham on trumpet, Frank Foster, J.R. Monterose, Tommy Flanagan, Kenny Clark, and it's just a great instrumental guitar record. I really like. I think Coltrane did a record with Kenny, and those two guys playing together, the sax and the guitar together, is probably one of my favorite combinations in jazz. And like I said, I throw this kind of thing on a morning, having coffee, just kind of easing into the day. Yeah. And it's really great. But of course, on the back, we have the
traditional jazz look,
the biography, and the telling of all of the stories in the album and the personnel and stuff. And I'm just going to do this real quick. Yeah, look at this. These pictures on the inside of them recording the record.
Yeah, now that's the jazz look you expect. Oh. The album is, the cover is like, wow, that's a jazz record?
It's very different.
Yeah.
For sure. But I marvel, since we work in TV and video and work with photographers a lot, I know how expensive photographers are, but these guys were in the studio seemingly for every recording.
Yeah.
Taking photos. I mean,
they documented the scene very, very well.
Yeah. So good on them. And good on you, Don Was, for steering this ship in this direction, because they have, the Tone Poet is like the highest quality re-release that they do, but they also do an acoustic sounds series, which is usually just not gatefolds, but those are still 180 gram releases, and I have a couple of those too. They sound great. But yeah, I just had to bring this because I love the cover because of how distinctive it is for a jazz record.
And it's a Warhol.
Yeah, and it's Andy. He probably wasn't very busy in 1956.
All right, so I'm up.
Yep.
And I don't like doing compilations for essentials, but this one has to be on there.
You're excused, by the way, because I've done a couple, and John is having trouble locating his next record. Oh, yeah.
The Buzzcocks.
Oh.
Singles Going Steady. And it was their first release on IRS.
Nice. And International Recording Syndicate.
Yes. In 79.
1979.
So a bunch of great records in the genre I really like. Punk and alternative came out in 79.
And that early post-punk stuff too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Singles Going Steady. And this was when Pete Shelley was still in the band.
I have never dug into the Buzzcocks, man. I need to.
Orgasmatic.
Mm.
That's a good song.
That'd be a good one to start on. What is that, 17 seconds?
Yeah, it's really fast. And this was and why this is important for the U.S., this was the first release for the Buzzcocks in the U.S.
Oh, okay. Cool. Did you get this at that time?
No, I probably picked it up in the early 80s,
Mm-hmm.
and this was one I'm almost positive I picked up at second time around, Tony's store.
You definitely fed Tony's wallet there for a while, right?
Well, there weren't a lot of places to find these different records at that time.
Or imports. Yeah.
Imports or just unknown bands.
Yeah.
Bands that didn't get played on the radio. You didn't find them at your everyday record store.
Right. Where was it? Was it in Broad Ripple?
In Broad Ripple.
Okay. I wish I could have hung out there. I bet it was something going into Tony's store. And
yeah, and it was very much like High Infidelity.
Or High Fidelity.
High Fidelity.
Yeah.
Not the REO.
Speedwagon
Yeah.
album. Yeah. That's a good album, though. No, that's cool. Do you have a lot of their stuff?
I don't have a lot. I have this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe one other release.
Well, for some bands, that's great.
Yeah.
To be able to, if you're not a completist or you're not really into them, a collection is fine. I think I had Queen Greatest Hits as one of my essentials because that was kind of a cheat, because I think all of the Queen albums in one way or another are essential, and I just didn't want to take up 12 spaces with 12 Queen records. So I think you're forgiven for having compilation wheels.
New Music Express, it's like a London organization that writes about music.
Yeah.
NME, better known. They called this the best album the Buzzcocks never made.
That's awesome. They're another one of those bands, man. It just kind of right before my time, and I've never dug in to them.
They have a distinctive sound. Pete Shelley.
Yeah. I mean, in this essentials list, you've got Husker Du and the Buzzcocks. Those are two very cool selections.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, my essential stuff's going to definitely be heavily on the punk alternative.
Yeah, of course. And that's why it's your list.
Yes.
All right. I love this record. This came out, I think.
Oh, The Cult.
I think I was a sophomore in high school, and I had just gotten this on cassette because I think it was before I had a CD player. Anyway, it's The Cult, Sonic Temple, and I love the band because I feel like they are kind of a hard rock / heavy metal / punk band all shoved into one thing. And if you look closely, it's kind of fallen down, but there is a hype sticker that's triangular, which is acceptable.
That's approved.
It is approved. This is the fourth studio album by The Cult, released April 10, 1989. And it features some of the band's most popular songs, including Firewoman, Edie Chow Baby. It was the last album recorded with their longtime bassist, Jamie Stewart, who left in 1990. Mickey Curry was a drummer on this. I've seen these guys between The Cult and Social Distortion. Those are probably the two bands that I've seen the most live. I absolutely adore them. You got Billy Duffy on the cover here, strumming the guitar.
Doing his Pete Townsend.
Yeah, doing his Pete Townsend. Then you have Ian there. But there's something about the way that this record sounds. This was produced by Bob Rock, who's kind of become a legend in the music industry. He did Dr. Feelgood for Motley Crue.
Oh, okay.
And then on the heels of that, he produced Metallica's Black Album.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
And people love Bob Rock for just sonically how the albums...
The guitar is just amazing.
The guitar is really, really in your face, but the drum sounds he gets are also amazing. So this is the 30th anniversary press of this. I don't see an original of Sonic Temple, and I just don't see a lot of cult when I go to stores or go to record shows.
No, they don't just pop, which is odd because I have this too, and it's one of those things that for whatever reason, it just doesn't pop up much, which is just mystifying to me.
Yeah, it's almost like they're in a cult. I know, it's a stretch. Anyway, great record. These guys were on a tear between, it was Love before this, right? Or was Love, I think.
Love was the first, yeah.
Yeah, or Love was the first.
I believe so.
Cult record, yeah. And then they did an album after this called Ceremony that was really, really good. They're just a great band, and I feel like they're underrated, and people just don't know about them. I mean, when you think about it, this came out in '89, so all of the hair metal stuff was happening, and these guys definitely are not a hair metal band. I think they kind of got lost in the shuffle. I mean, obviously they had a hit with this, but I think that they kind of get lost in all of those bands, because once those bands in '92, once the grunge gate came down, all those bands just evaporated off the face of the planet.
All the hair metal bands just kind of went away.
And they kind of continued on.
Yeah.
And that's when I was seeing them in the early to mid 90s. And gosh, I've probably seen them 6 times. They're always a great band. I mean, between them, bands like this that I don't think that you can necessarily pigeonhole into one.
Yeah, because I definitely wouldn't call them hair metal.
No, not at all.
And I wouldn't call them grunge.
No, I wouldn't call them metal. I think they're just hard rock.
Yeah, they're hard rock.
So distinctive too, with Ian Astbury sounding so. I think I've always thought he sounds like Jim Morrison.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I love this record, and very lucky to have the 30th anniversary pressing of it.
I had tickets to this show.
Oh, did you?
And I didn't go.
They were opening for somebody, right?
It was...
I don't think that they were... I thought that they played MSA opening for somebody.
No, this was at Deer Creek or whatever it's called.
Okay.
And I didn't go.
Yeah.
I think they were the headliner.
Yeah.
And I didn't go to meet my wife's sister.
Ah.
She wasn't my wife at the time.
Your girlfriend's sister.
We may have been engaged at the time. To meet my future sister-in-law.
1989.
Yes.
Man, you've been married a long time.
I shouldn't have said that.
What's your next one? We're getting down to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, let's keep it fun. Cake, Fashion Nugget. And I've talked about this album before, but Cake is... They're one of those bands, they've never changed their sound at all.
No.
Everything kind of sounds like Cake.
Yeah.
But I mean, every song is fun.
That's what I was just going to say. They're a fun band. And did you get this in the box? No, you don't have the box.
I don't have the box set. That's one of my last remaining whales that I'd love to get.
Yeah.
But that's a big chunk of change. Anywhere from $600 to $2,000.
That's insane to me. You're Never There. Is that the big song off this?
This had a lot of well-known Cake songs.
I Will Survive, right?
The Distance was probably the biggest one.
Oh, okay. That's right. You're Never There and The Distance, I get those two confused.
And then Race Car Ya-Ya's got a lot of play. And I Will Survive, the cover that Gloria Gaynor hates.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? I think she's dead now, but I think she made it very clear that she was not a fan.
Yeah. 14 songs. And let's see.
What year? 95?
96.
Okay. Yeah.
Certified gold. You wouldn't expect that.
Well, I mean, by that time, bands weren't selling 5, 6, 7 million copies of records like they were in the 80s. So for a band that's kind of like this off kilter to sell that many records, that's 500,000. That's a lot. And I bet it's beyond that by now.
Oh yeah. For sure. And this was I love all the Cake albums because not only do they not sound that much different, every album looks alike. They're all this kind of yellow kind of clip art.
Yeah.
With the big name Cake up there.
Yeah. It is very distinctive. I mean, they are distinctive in sound and in look.
Yeah.
And when you, like, I think I saw that, and when I was in Denver a month ago, we went to a couple different record stores and I saw a Cake record, like, as soon as I walked in. And it was like, because of that aesthetic.
You can't miss it.
Yeah. You can't mistake it for something else. What album is it? Or it's Capricorn Records. Huh.
Yes, because by this time they this is the album that really, this was I think their second release.
I think you're right.
Yeah, second studio album. So their first one didn't get a lot of well-known airplay, but this
is their breakout record.
It was a combination of the time. By the mid-90s, grunge was starting to fade away, and there were tons of genres. I mean, it was a good mixed up time for music because you had like Cherry Poppin' Daddies.
You had Brian Setzer with Jump Jive and Wail around that time, and
there was kind of there were all kinds of different music genres taking off.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, I can't remember what that Brian Setzer album was. If I had that on record, that would be an essential. I was with the Brian Setzer Orchestra from their first record, and it took a few years, and then it exploded. So you're right, you had Cherry Poppin' Daddies.
Ska was going through a revival with Mighty Mighty Boss Tones.
Mighty Boss Tones. There were a couple different, Big Rude Jake was another one of those kind of off-kilter
and
dudes.
Cake kind of has a bit of a ska sound because they have a lot of horns.
Yeah.
And I've seen them a few times, and I'm not going to say they put on a great show because they just play. They're not one of those bands that are way into it.
Yeah. They do their business and then they leave the stage, right? Yeah. That's a great choice, dude.
Yeah, Cake is. I'd love to have all their stuff, but I mean, really, you can't get that much of it on vinyl.
No, you can't. Speaking of an MOV record, this just came out, and when I was in Denver, I discovered that all of these later Elvis Costello records were being repopped by MOV. So, of course, I had to have them because I only ever had them on CD, and none of these records, this came out in 96, none of these records were ever released on vinyl when they came out. So this so this is 96. This peaked at number 28 on the UK album chart and number 53 on the Billboard 200. This is All This Useless Beauty, Elvis Costello and the Attractions, and this is actually the final Attractions album.
Oh.
Yeah, because after that, his band was called The Imposters because got a new bassist.
Renamed the band.
Yeah. But this is about 2 years after my deep dive into Elvis Costello. Brutal Youth came out in 94, and then this came out. And I adore this record. The song All This Useless Beauty is fantastic. There's a song, The Other End of the Telescope. There was a re-release of this, I think, in 2001, where Warner Rhino re-released all of his stuff on CD. And every one of his albums had an extra CD. And I'm not just talking like an extra 5 songs. I'm talking like 15, 20 songs, outtakes, demos, live versions, and the one of this record just blew me away. because I think there were actually more songs on the second disc than there were on the original. Obviously, this is just the original album. I'd love if they re-released that 2-disc version, but he's one of those guys. I just saw his wife Diana Krall live, and she is fantastic. She is a jazz piano player and singer, and she is really, really good. Her band is out of this world. She played my favorite Elvis Costello song as the encore that night.
Really?
Almost Blue. Yeah, which is basically like a jazz song. But this record is, it's crazy to me that the last Attractions record may be my second favorite Attractions record, because his first record isn't an Elvis Costello and the Attractions. It's just Elvis Costello. Armed Forces started with the Attractions. I could really go into the Elvis Costello minutia, but I won't. But this is a great record, and there's the back cover. I will be listening to all of these new MOV Elvis Costello records a lot, so maybe I should have bought 2 of each. Yeah. That really would have been.
How many did you wind up getting?
5.
5.
Yeah. This Kojak Variety, which is a record of his favorite songs that he grew up with, re-recorded. The Juliet Letters, which is with the Brodsky Quartet, so it's more of a classical type thing. Spike, which is a really, really good record, and Mighty Like a Rose. And I love them all. And if I had room in my essentials list, they'd all be there. Yes, Elvis Costello and the Attractions, all this useless beauty. Go out, dig it up, listen to it, and wonder where all your money went. What's your next?
All right, so next, I got to keep it essentials for everyone.
Yeah.
Pet Sounds.
This is absolutely an essential.
Yes. Beach Boys, Pet Sounds. I can't say I'm a big Beach Boys fan, but if you're going to get one Beach Boys record, this is the one to have.
Yep. Oh, Sloop John B is absolutely my favorite song on here. God Only Knows is pretty damn good, too.
Yeah, there are some really, really great songs on this. I mean, they had 3 singles. Caroline No, Sloop John B, and Wouldn't It Be Nice?
What year did this come out? Was it 66?
This came out in 66.
Okay, so this...
And the 11th studio release.
Isn't that crazy?
The 11th album.
Yeah.
And this is their most... I'd say it's probably their most well-known album.
Right. But what I was going to say was, and correct me if I'm wrong in there, Keith, but I believe Pet Sounds was the album that kind of spurred the Beatles to write and record Sgt. Pepper. They were kind of, as I understand it, they were kind of going back and forth trying to outdo each other. So were it not for this record, and as good as it is on its own merit, we may not have had Sgt. Pepper and the latter psychedelic type Beatles stuff.
Yeah, and this was when the Beach Boys were really starting to get away from and trying to experiment with music. Yes. And try to be something more than their name.
Yeah. And, do you know where the title comes from?
No.
Basically, he was either in his studio or in his room, and all he thought about, cared about, or did other than sleep was write and record and arrange this stuff. So they said that they were his pet sounds.
Ah.
So they took it and ran with it, and the cover is
the
them.
cover's kind of strange.
Yeah.
They're feeding
goats. Yeah. Which Wheels would fit right in there, because Wheels is a big...
I like goats.
Wheels is a big goat guy.
Goats!
I mean, I have a stereo press of this, but what I really want is a mono press.
Yeah, a mono press would be great.
And when they re-released this for the anniversary like last year, or what would it have been? 45th or 55th, right?
Nobody said there'd be any math.
Anyway, they did a stereo and a mono pressing, and I just can't find the goddamn mono pressing for a decent amount.
And this didn't meet with great critical acclaim when it first came out. And it was maybe because the Beach Boys are doing something, they're trying something different.
Unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, years later, it's regarded as like
one of the gems
of the Beach Boy catalog.
Yeah. Of music.
Oh, yeah. And it peaked at number 10 on the Billboard top LPs.
Awesome. I would have thought it would have been even more than that. But at the same time, you're talking about 66. The Beach Boys had that heyday, the surf rock heyday in the late 50s, early 60s, and then the Beatles came on the scene and stole everybody's thunder. But 10 is pretty good.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as sales go, it was like a number 2 with the record retailers.
That's crazy.
So it was selling well.
Yeah.
Even though the evil critics didn't like it.
Is there any mention there of how many copies of this have been sold?
Ooh, there probably is, but I don't know where.
Okay. Well, then we just won't talk about that. That's a great record, man. I've got so many things to listen to when I get home.
Yeah, this is a fun record to put on occasionally and just, hey, feel where they were at the time.
Yeah.
I think the Beach Boys were experimenting with LSD a lot at the time.
Well, let's see. What's the album previous to Sgt. Pepper? Is it Rubber Soul?
It's Revolver.
Revolver. Okay.
Rubber Soul came first.
Okay.
It actually was more of the influence for Brian Wilson on this album.
That's right. So,
the voice of God sets us straight.
The VOK, voice of Keith. So Revolver is getting ready to be, I think next week, Revolver gets its new brand spanking new release. And that's one of the things. We are going to do a Beatles episode with Mr. Toombs. That's one of the things that's really interesting to me is you've got an enormous band from the U.S. You've got an enormous band from the U.K. that has taken over the U.S. and they're just like volleying back and forth.
Yeah.
I really love the idea of that. I'm sure it's probably been romanticized a little bit too.
Yeah, but it was really the battle of the bands.
Yeah, and it's such a cool like side story to the music. So when we do that episode, we'll have to post note that in our brains and talk about that too.
And this album kind of revolutionized the field of music production because there was orchestration and all these different sounds. So there was a lot going on. So whatever he was doing in the room paid off.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. All right, my next one is, we just mentioned this guy. This is called Rockabilly Riot. It's Brian Setzer. This is kind of Brian's love letter to Sun Records and all the rockabilly stuff. I think this came out in, I want to say 04 or 05. And the cool thing about this record is he used a lot of the tape machines that they used at Sun Records. He used instruments that they used to record those original records. And he did it right.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Red Hot, Slow Down, Real Wild Child, Rock House, Put Your Cat Clothes On, Mona Lisa, Get Rhythm, Stairway to Nowhere, Boppin' the Blues, Rakin' and Scrapin', Red Cadillac and a Black Mustache. I think that the Stray Cats and Brian Setzer are extraordinarily overlooked.
Without a doubt.
In popular music. I mean, I know you would know better because when the Stray Cats busted out, I was like 8, 9 years old. And I swear to you, I remember hearing Rock This Town, and I thought that I had just heard the voice of God or something. I have been on board with the Stray Cats from the first time that I heard it, and I don't know why that is.
It just really spoke to you.
It did, but think about it. In the early 80s, when you've got all this post-punk stuff happening, the Ramones have blown up, you've got The Cure just coming on, goth-type pop stuff.
And, you know, I think the early 80s gets overlooked as like, oh, it was just new wave. But there was ska, there was, you know, like country rock.
Country was huge too.
Yeah, like Rank and File had a bunch of really big songs.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Blasters were doing rockabilly too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there were a couple of rock. There were all these different genres coming out at that same time. It was a little bit like, you know, what happened in the later 90s.
Yeah. This is a great record. Go out there and listen to it. He just also happens to be one of the best guitarists that you'll ever see. Anything he does, I am on board with. He did a few volumes of this. This is volume 1. I think there's 3 volumes. There's a second volume that is all original rockabilly style music that he wrote himself.
Oh, okay.
Which is very cool as well. But when I saw that this was being re-released on vinyl like 2 years ago, I was like, give me that. And it's a double LP, and it is a gatefold, the way God intended. And
I love that he used the instruments and recording devices that they used to record those records.
Yeah. I think he may have actually recorded at Sun.
Oh, nice.
As well. Yeah, which if you're going to kind of have an ode to the original...
You got to do it right.
Yeah, and he always does. Speaking of which, I think he lives outside of Minneapolis, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know where he's originally from.
New York, I think.
New York?
But he married a woman who was from Minneapolis, and I believe they moved up there like 10 years ago because I see him on Facebook, and he'll post stuff about his cars and motorcycles and stuff, and it always looks just fucking cold out.
Welcome to Minneapolis.
Yeah. I like the artwork on here too because they have the Sun label. Yeah. He's definitely a favorite.
That's a nice one.
Thanks.
All right, so I'll wrap it up.
Yep.
Wrap it up for me.
Yeah. The last record. Oh, man.
With U2, Joshua Tree.
Ugh.
And I'm going to have to make a confession. This is not my favorite U2 album.
Boy is, right?
Probably War. I like those first 4 U2 albums really the best.
Yeah.
And by this time, I think after this one came out, I did see him on this tour. But after this one came out, it just kind of, my taste for U2 dwindled a little bit.
They became hit and miss with me after this. But this is a great album. And I went to that tour, I think in 2018, where they did the anniversary of this.
Yeah, that was a great show.
Is it Brian Eno that produced this? Yes. Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno.
Yeah.
Yep. This kind of solidified their sound too. You know, it's what happens when you record a podcast down the street from a race car team. Anyway, that reverb heavy guitar and stuff, that all kind of started here.
Yeah.
With this record, and they've kind of carried that. That's like a theme through their music now. I mean, when you think of The Edge, you think of that style of guitar playing. But these guys, man, they were another one. I didn't latch on to them like you did because you were old enough and mature enough to appreciate when they came on the scene. I was a few years behind, but man, this is a great record. And I love the artwork and the packaging and everything for this. And the older I get, the more I appreciate this album. Yeah,
it's one that, and this was bright as, I didn't have this on vinyl for the longest time because this was it came out in 87, and this was a period when I was making the transition to CDs because record companies had decided they're going to quit making albums. So I'm like, I'm going to quit buying them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. And, all the photos and stuff. This is a gatefold and just a single record. What's your favorite?
Oh boy.
Is Where the Streets Have No Name on this one?
Yes.
I'm a pretty big fan of that.
Probably my favorite is I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For.
Yeah. That's kind of the song from this record. I'm going to just whip this open real quick.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, very cool.
There at Joshua Tree. And it's funny because U2 has with the Southwest, after that live album that had some stuff.
Somebody didn't mute their phone. It's so funny. You just talked about a ZZ Top album, and that's your ringtone. What were you saying? Sorry.
So U2 had this love affair with the Southwest.
Yeah.
Because they had some albums from. Their concert at Red Rocks was huge. Yeah. And then this Joshua Tree, Joshua Tree National Park.
Yeah. It's very cool. I think the artwork lends itself to the starkness of the way some of the songs sound. Well, my last one is a classic for some people. It's Joe's Garage by Mr. Frank Zappa. And this is the album that I was introduced to Zappa by a friend in high school. And we were on spring break one year, and he had the cassette of this. This was pre-CD days, and we're driving around Fort Lauderdale on spring break listening to Joe's Garage. So you can imagine how many girls we had to beat off of us with a baseball bat. I just got this. Jason Russell just gifted this to me, and it's only volume 1, but Joe's Garage is obviously a classic. The Central Scrutinizer kind of narrates this album and talks in between the songs. Cruise Slut is another real good one on here. Catholic Girls, Wet T-Shirt Night, that's another good one. Not as good as Titties and Beer, but kind of related. Why Does It Hurt When I Pee? That's another classic. And Lucille Has Messed My Mind Up. And just the musicianship, the crazy collision of styles that Zappa is, where he was really feet dug into doo-wop. And if you listen to his stuff, no matter what album it is, you can hear that, whether it's the way the music sounds or the vocals. He's one of those dudes that peels back layers in my mind when I listen to him. And, I just love Zappa. And he's also another one, like Dylan. If you're trying to collect everything he ever did, you're going to go broke.
Yeah, there's a lot of Zappa. And, Zappa it's funny because it's not like his stuff gets any sort of airplay.
No.
Even on XM radio,
No.
You're not going to hear a bunch of Zappa.
No.
It's just something that is reserved for an album.
Yeah, and he is one of a kind. There's no doubt about it. If you get a chance, check out the Zappa doc. It's just called Zappa. Alex Winter of Bill and Ted fame directed it with the full support of the Zappa family. So all the music's in there. It was much different than I expected it to be, but still really, really good. And if you don't know anything about Frank and his bands and everything, it's definitely worth checking out. Well, that's our eighth.
That covers it.
Our 8th installment of the Essential Albums, and we've got 20 more albums.
20 more. That seems like a lot.
Is that right? Or is this 80 through 89?
It's 80 through 89.
81 through 89.
Yeah.
So we've got... That can't be right. Right? No, we've got 2 more. Yeah, this is volume 8. We've got 2 more. We aren't good at math, folks. And if you're good at math, you're probably not a record collector, because you'll look at your bank account and say, wait a minute, something's not right here. We want to thank everybody for all the support. We're kind of getting into a groove where we're doing shows a little more often. And this is episode 42. Like John said at the beginning of the show, we kind of just blurted out this essential albums thing, a year ago. And it not only has it been challenging, but it's also introduced me to a lot of things in my collection that I think I kind of would have gotten forgotten.
Yeah.
Kind of wouldn't get out that often. So we still want more interaction with you. So if you have an essentials list, if it's 10 or 20 albums, share them with us on our social media accounts, and any other show ideas we'd love to have, because I know that we keep saying that. I feel like a broken record saying it over and over again. But what we've learned is this is a community, and we kind of want to start that community with all of you guys listening. We know almost every month we've got about 350, close to 400 downloads. And in the times that we don't have new shows, we have so many shows now that people are going back and listening to the old ones, which is absolutely awesome. And, just so keep in touch with us, look for us on social media. We'll try to instigate those conversations a little more often than we do. We just want to thank you all for tuning in and, being part of this sickness with us, because it would be a very lonely thing to be a record collector and not have anybody to talk to about this. So for Wheels, I'm Jay, and we'll see you all the next time around.